So the Academy Awards have come and gone, and while we all know what happened after that disastrous finale, I thought I'd give my own thoughts about what happened. But before we get into that, I actually wanted to discuss the Best Picture nominees. There's a lot of films to get through in very little time, so let's get to it. You already know my thoughts on it. Go see it. Written by Taylor Sheridan, the same guy who made every single Hispanic and Mexican angry with his last written movie Sicario, and directed by David Mackenzie, this film is surprisingly really tense. Chris Pine sheds his pretty boy look with a well-delivered performance as the weary brother who's in the shadow of his older brother, which Ben Foster is also just as good as him, is one for the ages. Jeff Bridges is decent, albeit you've seen this performance a dozen times, i.e. True Grit. Still, the movie flows at a brisk pace. It's one of the shortest films nominated for Best Picture. It doesn't waste any time, with great editing and cinematography that fits the mood of the characters and the tone of the story as it changes. Good on you, Giles Nutkins. It gets a 9 out of 10. Not exactly on the level of being a masterpiece, but I see it getting a huge cult following. Directed by Denis Villeneuve, I hope to God I pronounced that right, the director of Prisoners, Sicario, and the upcoming Blade Runner 2049, Arrival tells the story of a woman who's tasked by the government to help decipher the language of visitors from another planet, and slowly becomes engrossed in their culture. This movie surprised me with how amazing it was. The haunting score by Johan Johansson is well-timed in all the right areas. The performances are all around great, especially for Amy Adams, who shines here. How she didn't get nominated for Best Actress is beyond me, and again, edited in such a way that its 2-hour runtime just breezes by. If I had one complaint, it's gotta be the fact that the cinematography by Bradford Young, while still pretty great in its own right, it's no Roger Deakins, and you can tell it when you watch the Blade Runner 2049 trailer. It's a 9 out of 10, it deserves to be seen, and don't you dare have it spoiled because it's a huge disservice to the story. Wow, this film caught me off guard. Telling the true story of Saru, a little boy who gets separated by his family by boarding the wrong train and accidentally ending up in Calcutta, the film surprisingly got to me on an emotional level. The first act with Sonny Power as young Saru was fantastic. The second act admittingly goes on a downward slope when he gets picked up by the Australian family, which, side note, Nicole Kidman is horrible in this movie, but at least she looks like the real life person, so props for the casting. And when Dev Patel meets and falls in love with Rooney Mara, who's wasted in this movie by the way, it slows to a crawl. Still, it all builds up to the final act, which is one of the most heartwarming things on film this year. And I'm gonna admit, it got me to cry. The screenplay could have gotten some work done on it, but for a first-time director like Garth Davis, it's the best we could have hoped. It's an 8 out of 10, which could have been better, but it's still a good movie in its own right and earns its nomination. Mel Gibson is back! Until he gets excommunicated by Hollywood again. This film is pretty good. Say what you will about Mel Gibson, but the man is a legend, both as an actor and as a director. The main thing that's wrong with this is that the first half of the film that deals with Desmond's romance with Teresa Palmer's character was so awkward, and Andrew Garfield comes across as a date rapist, and it wouldn't have been that big of a deal if it wasn't for the fact that it takes center stage for the majority of the first act, that it distracts and you don't buy the relationship right from the get-go. Still, once Doss goes overseas to the war in Okinawa, it shifts gears fast, and the film gets so much better. It's got objectively the best war scene since Saving Private Ryan, and becomes surprisingly thrilling. If it wasn't for that first act, I would have given this a higher rating, because this film, aside from that, is pretty great. This one gets a 7 out of 10, which is more than earned. If only the first act was a little bit better. And, you know, Andrew Garfield wasn't so creepy. By the way, his nomination for Best Actor was clearly for Silence, which you need to watch. It's a 9 out of 10. The Best Picture winner! Technically, telling the story of Chiron through 3 stages of his life, he discovers himself and embraces his sexuality over the course of 3 chapters in the film: Little, Chiron, and Black. The first act is amazing, and Mahershala Ali is easily the best part of the film as a drug-dealing father figure. The second act is good, but still keeps up the momentum set up by the first act. The thing that seals it for not being as good as I would have hoped it was is the third act, which, looking back on it now, makes sense from a storytelling perspective and a character development perspective, but it still makes for an anticlimactic ending that just fizzles out what they built up from the beginning. Still, the best thing I can give it credit for is the fact that the film never once tries to be political or ham-fisted with its message. That's for Hidden Figures. But the main thing that brings this movie down is Naomi Harris, who is terrible in this film. She plays the over-the-top drug junkie parent, and she yells and over-exaggerates every scene that she's in. I know this is based on writer-director Barry Jenkins' mother, and it's fairly accurate to how she was like in real life, and I admire it for that honesty and portrayal. But she's still horrible. Overall, a good movie. I just wish a few things were fixed, like the cinematography that varies from really good to amateur, and most of the performances. But at least the kids were good. It's a 6 out of 10. Next up, we got Daddy Dearest, starring Denzel Washington as a father who can't swallow his own pride and becomes one of the most unlikable people ever. The main thing I'll say about this movie is that the acting is amazing. Everyone's great. Though you wish that James Earl Jones was the main character like he was in the play. But the thing that bogs this movie down is the script. It's essentially the stage play copy and pasted as a screenplay. And this isn't a problem. I like a lot of things that feel like a play or take place in a single location over the span of a short amount of time. Like Steve Jobs or Horace and Pete. The problem here is that this film feels like the equivalent of filming a play when there's no audience. At least the final act is pretty good, but overall this isn't that good of a movie. It's a 5 out of 10. Decent acting doesn't save a poorly translated script and mediocrely directed film. Better luck next time, Denzel. Words cannot express how much I hated this film. I cannot fathom how this movie was nominated for Best Picture. Its biggest crime is being so boring. I haven't been so bored with a film in my whole life. It barely has any sound for one thing, and it's shot so blandly. Watching paint dry is more exciting than sitting through this. This is one of the worst Best Picture nominees that they could have given it to. But I'll give it some credit. At least the screenplay by Kenneth Lonergan was okay. I have to say that reading the film is better than watching it. It's a 2 out of 10 because I swear if it wasn't for the fact that the screenplay is okay, this is borderline pretentious trash. It would have been the worst film nominated for Best Picture if I didn't see. I actually have a review for this script, and the only thing I have written for it is barely anything happens. It's right here. Look, it's a 1 out of 10 because it's the most safe, predictable, frustratingly clean film among all of them. So that's all the Best Picture nominees. So who won? La La Land. For about 8 seconds.
There's a mistake. Moonlight, you guys won Best Picture.
Now, this is where I have to step in. Because say what you will about it, I thought the Oscars was pretty decent this year. Were there some missteps? Sure, like the Academy mistaking Best Makeup for Most Makeup with Suicide Squad now being an Academy Award-winning film. Oh my god, DC fanboys are gonna ride that out for the next couple of years. But the worst thing that could have happened was what happened with Best Picture. Because no matter how you slice it, La La Land and Moonlight both end up looking bad in the process. Both the films and the people that made them. See, for La La Land, it looks bad because that was their moment of glory. It almost felt like all that hard work that they did making that film paid off. They're up there mid-speech, telling everything, thanking their families, and then being told at the last minute, oh wait, your award was meant for the other guys. It felt like they literally took away their award. It took away their win, their hard work. And on top of that, being mistaken as the winner is also a really terrible thing. It's the equivalent of somebody handing you a $1 million check and then realizing, oh wait, we got the wrong house, let's go. And then it looks bad for Moonlight because the Academy Award for Best Picture should be the culmination of all the passion, blood, sweat, and tears that went into making a compelling story that reached out to millions of people, or even just one person that inspires people. And getting called up to win the award, It should be heartwarming. It should be relieving that all that torture, all that time, all that effort, all that passion, blood, sweat, tears, it all paid off. It should be a proud moment for the creators. And they were called up in the most awkward fashion that they could have been. And they were even confused too, like, did we win? It was almost like an afterthought. Now, I don't blame Warren Beatty or Faye Dunaway or even Jimmy Kimmel. I think it was an honest-to-God mistake. But what this does is it cheapens the two movies now. When people look back on this year of film and the Oscars, they won't see La La Land as a fun Hollywood love letter to old musicals, and they won't see Moonlight as a daring story about a black kid who's in touch with his sexuality. They won't look back on Moonlight winning Best Picture on its own merits for its talent. They'll look back on both these movies and being like, oh yeah, that was the time of year where they mixed up the movies together. It does the worst thing that people have accused the Oscars of being for the last few years. It cheapens them. And it's a sad thing for creatives, because it could happen to anybody. It could happen to you. And nobody wants that. But hey, that's life in Hollywood. Still, sobering realizations aside, last year was a decent year for cinema and a not so decent year for people in general, and I'm glad that it's over because 2017 is looking to be a better year already, with movies like Get Out, Split, and John Wick Chapter 2 being great films that are well received at the box office. I can't wait to see what's next.
Away. Logan, you still have time.
Next time.